Danny Carver wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag and looked up at the evening sky. The sun was setting over Nebraska, painting the clouds in shades of orange and pink. It had been a long day at the garage, and his stomach was growling. He tossed the rag onto his workbench, grabbed his jacket, and walked down the quiet street towards diner. This was the kind of place that had not changed in 40 years. The same red booths, the same checkered floor, the same smell of coffee and fried bacon. Danny had been coming here since he was a boy, back when his father used to bring him for milkshakes after Little League games. Now, at 32, he came alone. He never married, never really found the time. His life was simple. He fixed cars, he helped his neighbors, and he ate his Turkey Club sandwich at the same booth every evening. The bell above the door jingled as he walked in. A heavy woman with kind eyes and gray hair waved at him from behind the counter. "The usual Danny," she called out. "You know it," he said with a smile. He slid into his favorite booth by the window and looked outside. The street was empty. A few cars passed by slowly. An old dog wandered across the road. Everything was normal. Everything was quiet. Then the door opened again. Danny turned to look, and what he saw made him pause. A young woman stepped inside. She was thin and pale, with long silver hair that fell past her shoulders. Her skin had a strange glow to it, almost like moonlight. Her eyes were large and violet, and they looked around the diner with confusion and fear. She wore clothes that did not look like anything Danny had ever seen. They were smooth and shiny, like they were made from liquid metal. The other customers stopped eating and stared. A man in a trucker hat whispered something to his wife. A group of teenagers in the corner booth started laughing quietly, frowned and crossed her arms, watching the stranger carefully. The woman did not seem to notice. She walked slowly to an empty booth and sat down. She looked tired, more than tired. She looked like she had not eaten in days. Her hands were shaking, and she kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to come through it at any moment. Danny watched her for a long time. He saw the way she looked at the menu without understanding it. He saw the way she flinched when approached her. He saw her shake her head and push the menu away, her eyes filling with something like shame. He did not know who she was or where she came from. He did not care. All he saw was someone who needed help. Brought his sandwich to the table. It was thick and warm, piled high with turkey, bacon, lettuce, and tomato. Danny looked at it for a moment, then looked back at the woman. Without thinking, he picked up a knife, cut the sandwich in half, and stood up. He walked over to her booth and placed the plate in front of her. "You look like you could use this more than me," he said. The woman looked up at him. Her violet eyes were wide with surprise. She stared at the sandwich, then at Danny, then back at the sandwich. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Go on," Danny said gently. "It's good. Makes the best turkey club in the state." The woman reached out slowly and picked up the sandwich. She took a small bite, then a larger one. Her eyes closed, and for a moment her whole body seemed to relax. When she opened her eyes again, they were wet with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was soft and musical, like the sound of wind chimes. Danny smiled and sat down across from her. "I'm Danny," he said. "Danny Carver." The woman hesitated. "Sira," she said finally. "My name is Sira." "Nice to meet you, Sira. You're not from around here, are you?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I am very far from home." Danny nodded. He did not ask where home was. He did not push for answers. He just sat with her while she ate, talking about small things. The weather, the town, the old pickup truck he had been fixing for 3 weeks. Sira listened quietly, and slowly the fear in her eyes began to fade. When she finished the sandwich, she looked at Danny with an expression he could not quite read. It was something between wonder and confusion. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "You do not know me. You do not know what I am." Danny shrugged. "You looked hungry. That's all that matters." Sira stared at him for a long moment. In her 10,000 years of life, she had met kings and emperors, warriors and scholars. She had commanded fleets of ships that could destroy entire planets. She had watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore, but never in all that time had anyone given her something simply because she needed it. There was always a price, always a motive, always a calculation. But this man, this simple human in a dirty jacket, had given her half of his meal without expecting anything in return. He did not know that she was the supreme ruler of the galactic conquered. He did not know that her word could save or destroy his entire world. He just saw a hungry stranger and decided to help. Something stirred in Sira's chest. It was a feeling she had not experienced in centuries. She did not have a name for it, but it felt warm and strange and wonderful. "You are a strange creature, Danny Carver," she said softly. He laughed. "I've been called worse." Outside, the sky had turned dark. Stars began to appear, one by one. Sira looked up at them through the window, and her eyes grew distant. "I must go soon," she said, "but I will not forget this. I will not forget you." Danny tilted his head. "You make it sound like we'll never see each other again." Sira did not answer. She just smiled sadly and looked back at the stars. She did not tell him that she was not human. She did not tell him that she had come to Earth to decide the fate of his entire species. She did not tell him that, somewhere far above them, a fleet of warships was waiting for her command. All she did was sit with him in that small diner, watching the stars, and feeling something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Sira walked through the quiet streets of as the night grew deeper. The town was asleep. Houses stood dark and silent, their windows reflecting the pale light of the moon. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. A cool wind rustled the leaves of the old oak trees that lined the road. She stopped at the edge of town and looked up at the sky. Behind the scattered clouds hidden from human eyes, her ship waited in orbit. It was a vessel of pure light, capable of crossing the galaxy in moments. With one thought, she could summon it. With one word, she could leave this world and return to her throne. But she did not. Instead, she found an empty barn at the edge of a farm and sat down on a pile of hay. She closed her eyes and let herself remember who she truly was. Her full name was, and she was the supreme sovereign of the galactic conquered. The conquered was not a nation or an empire in the human sense. It was everything. It stretched across 12 million star systems, containing billions of planets and trillions of beings. Species of every shape and form lived under its rule. Some had wings. Some had scales. Some existed as pure energy. All of them answered to her. Sira had ruled for over 9,000 years. She had watched stars being born and dying. She had ended wars that burned across entire galaxies. She had signed treaties with creatures so ancient that they remembered the birth of the universe itself. Her power was absolute. Her word was law. And yet, tonight, a man in a small diner had given her half of his sandwich, and it had shaken her more than any battle ever had. She did not understand humans. That was why she had come to Earth in the first place. 3 months ago, Conquered sensors had detected signals coming from a small yellow star on the edge of the galaxy. The signals were primitive: radio waves, television broadcasts, simple messages sent into the void by creatures who did not know what was listening. The Conquered had found thousands of species this way. Most of them were studied and then dealt with according to their potential threat level. Humanity had been flagged as a concern. The Conquered's analysts had studied their history and found it troubling. Humans were violent. They waged wars against each other for reasons that made no sense. They divided themselves by color, by belief, by invisible lines drawn on maps. They poisoned their own world while knowing the damage they caused. They built weapons capable of destroying everything they had created. And yet they also did strange things. They created music and art that served no practical purpose. They risked their lives to save strangers. They loved deeply and mourned greatly. They looked up at the stars with wonder instead of fear. The Conquered's High Council could not agree on what to do with them. Some wanted to quarantine Earth, sealing it away from the rest of the galaxy until humanity either destroyed itself or evolved beyond its violent nature. Others wanted to simply eliminate the threat before it could spread. A few, very few, suggested watching and waiting. Sira had listened to all their arguments, but she had made no decision. She wanted to see humans for herself. She wanted to walk among them unseen and learn what they truly were. So she had disguised herself. She had dimmed her light, softened her features, and taken a form that was almost human. Then she had descended to Earth and landed in the middle of nowhere, a place called Nebraska. For 3 days she wandered. She watched humans go about their small lives. She saw farmers working their fields. She saw children playing in schoolyards. She saw old couples holding hands on park benches. She saw 1,000 tiny moments that the Concord's analysts had never recorded. And then she had walked into his diner, hungry and exhausted from suppressing her true form, and Danny Carver had given her his sandwich. That single act haunted her. In the Concord, nothing was free. Every gift came with strings. Every kindness was a transaction. Even among her closest advisors, she could never be certain of their motives. They served her because they feared her power or wanted her favor. None of them had ever offered her something simply because she looked like she needed it. But Danny had. This strange, simple man with grease under his fingernails and a worn jacket had seen a stranger and chosen to help. He did not know she could buy his entire planet. He did not know she could grant him power beyond imagination. He just saw someone who was hungry and acted. The next morning, Sira decided to stay longer. She wanted to understand. She watched Danny from a distance. She saw him wake up early and go to his garage. She saw him fix an old woman's car and refuse to take payment because he knew she could not afford it. She saw him carry groceries for a man with a broken leg. She saw him stop on the side of the road to help a stranger change a flat tire in the rain. In the evening, he went back to his diner. Sira sat in the booth across from him and they talked again. He told her about his life. His father had died when he was young. His mother had worked 2 jobs to keep them fed. He had learned to fix things because they could not afford to replace them. He had never been rich, never been important, never done anything that would make the history books. "But I'm happy," he said with a shrug. "I've got a roof over my head, food in my belly, and good people around me. What more does a man need?" Sira did not have an answer. She had everything the universe could offer, and she could not remember the last time she had felt happy. She stayed in for 3 days. She watched, she listened, she learned. And slowly, she began to realize that the Concord's analysts had been wrong. Humanity was not a threat to be eliminated. They were not a disease to be quarantined. They were something far more dangerous. They were a mirror. They showed Sira everything the Concord had lost. The warmth, the connection, the simple joy of helping another being without asking why. Somewhere along the way, in its endless expansion across the stars, the Concord had forgotten what it meant to be alive. On the 3rd night, Sira sat alone on a hill outside of town and looked up at the stars. Her stars, her empire, her prison. For the first time in 9,000 years, she did not want to go back. While Sira walked the quiet streets of and learned what it meant to be human, the Galactic Concord was moving without her. High Arbiter stood on the bridge of his warship and stared at the blue planet floating in the darkness. His ship was one of 300, arranged in a perfect sphere around the solar system. Each vessel was massive, built for destruction, carrying weapons that could turn entire continents to ash in seconds. Together, they had enough power to shatter a world. Was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old stone. His eyes were black and empty, showing no emotion. He had served the Concord for 6,000 years, and in that time he had overseen the elimination of 47 species. He did not enjoy it. He did not hate it. He simply did what needed to be done. The Concord could not tolerate uncertainty. Young species were unpredictable, and unpredictable things were dangerous. Humanity had been studied. Humanity had been judged, and the High Council, in the absence of their Empress, had made a decision. Containment Protocol 7. Earth would be sealed behind an energy barrier, invisible and unbreakable. No human would ever leave their planet. No signal would ever escape. They would live and die in a cage, never knowing how close they had come to joining the stars. If they resisted, the protocol authorized sterilization. It was clean. It was efficient. It was, believed, merciful. A quick death was better than the chaos that young species often brought to the galaxy. He had sent a message to the Empress 3 days ago, informing her of the Council's decision. He had received no response. This did not surprise him. The Empress often disappeared for long periods, wandering the galaxy in her secret ships, observing the universe in ways that no one else understood. She always returned eventually. She always approved the Council's decisions. This time would be no different. "Begin the barrier sequence," ordered. His voice was cold and flat. The officers on the bridge moved to obey. Far below, in the small town of Sira, felt something cold run through her mind. It was a signal, a pulse of information transmitted directly into her consciousness. She stopped walking and closed her eyes. The message played in her head, his voice calm and official, explaining the Council's ruling. Containment Protocol 7, barrier sequence initiated. Estimated completion, 6 hours. Sira's blood turned to ice. She stood frozen in the middle of the street, her heart pounding. The message continued, listing the reasons for the decision: humanity's violent history, their unpredictable nature, the potential threat they pose to galactic stability. Every word was logical. Every argument was sound. The analysts had done their work well. But all Sira could think about was Danny. She saw his face in her mind, his warm smile, his kind eyes, the way he had placed that sandwich in front of her without asking for anything in return. She thought about the old woman whose car he had fixed, the man with the broken leg, the stranger on the side of the road. These were the people the conquered wanted to seal away forever. These were the beings the Council had judged too dangerous to live among the stars. They were wrong. They were so terribly, completely wrong. Sira opened her eyes and started walking. Her steps were fast now, urgent. She needed to find Danny. She needed to say goodbye. She needed to look at him one more time before she left. She found him at his diner, sitting in his usual booth. He looked up when she walked in, and his face broke into a smile. "Sira, I was hoping you'd stop by. Made pie today. You have to try it." Sira slid into the booth across from him. Her hands were shaking. She tried to control her expression, but something must have shown in her eyes, because Danny's smile faded. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Sira looked at him. This simple, beautiful man who had shown her more kindness in 3 days than she had experienced in 9,000 years. He had no idea what was coming. He had no idea that, in 6 hours, his entire world would be locked away forever. She wanted to tell him. She wanted to explain everything. But what could she say? How could she make him understand? Instead, she reached across the table and took his hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth. "I have to go," she said. "I have to leave now, and I do not know if I will ever come back." Danny's eyes widened. Why, Sira, what's going on?" She squeezed his hand. "I cannot explain. There is no time, but I want you to know something, Danny Carver. I want you to know that you changed something in me. Something I thought was dead a long time ago." Danny stared at her, confusion and concern written across his face. "Sira, you're scaring me. Whatever's wrong, maybe I can help. Let me help." Sira felt tears forming in her eyes. When was the last time she had cried? She could not remember. "You already have," she whispered, "more than you will ever know." She stood up from the booth. Danny stood too, reaching for her arm. "Wait," he said, "please, at least tell me where you're going." Sira looked at him one last time. She memorized his face, the lines around his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead. She wanted to remember every detail. "Home," she said. "I am going home." Before Danny could respond, golden light surrounded her. It was warm and bright, like sunlight made solid. It wrapped around her body and lifted her off the ground. Danny stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock. "Sira," he shouted. But she was already gone. The light flashed once, brilliant and blinding, and then faded to nothing. Danny stood alone in the diner, his hands still reaching for the empty air where she had been. Came running from the kitchen. The other customers were on their feet, shouting and pointing. But Danny just stood there, staring at the spot where Sira had disappeared. He did not understand what had just happened. He did not know who Sira really was or where she had gone. All he knew was that something important had just left his life, and the world suddenly felt colder. Outside, the stars continued to shine, cold and distant, and somewhere among them, a fleet of warships prepared to seal humanity's fate. The golden light carried Sira across the darkness of space in less than a heartbeat. One moment she was standing in his diner, holding Danny's hand. The next, she was materializing on the bridge of the conquered flagship, her true form blazing like a newborn star. The officers on the bridge stumbled backward. Warning alarms screamed as the ship systems detected the massive energy surge. Weapons powered up automatically, targeting the intruder before anyone could process what was happening. Then they saw her face, and the bridge went silent. Sira stood before them in her full glory. Her silver hair floated around her head like a halo of light. Her violet eyes burned with ancient power. Her skin glowed with the radiance of 1,000 suns. She was no longer the tired, hungry woman who had wandered into a small-town diner. She was supreme sovereign of the galactic conquered, ruler of 12 million star systems, and the most powerful being in the known universe. High Arbiter fell to his knees. His gray face had gone pale, and his empty black eyes were wide with shock. "Empress," he stammered, "we did not know you were. We did not expect." "Silence," Sira said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Every being on the bridge felt it in their bones. Even the ship itself seemed to tremble. Sira walked forward, her feet not quite touching the floor. She moved past the kneeling officers, past the frozen crew members, until she stood before the main viewport. Earth hung in the darkness ahead, blue and beautiful, wrapped in white clouds. "Stand down the fleet," she commanded. Rose slowly to his feet. His face was a mask of confusion. "Your Grace," he said carefully, "the Council has ruled. Containment Protocol 7 has been authorized. The barrier sequence is already in progress. In 3 hours, the planet will be." "I said stand down." Sira turned to face him. Her eyes were burning now, twin flames of violet fire that made take an involuntary step backward. "But the Council," he began. "The Council answers to me," Sira interrupted. "As do you, as does every being in this fleet. Stand down the barrier sequence, or I will dismantle your ships one atom at a time." Swallowed hard. He had served the conquered for 6,000 years. He had witnessed the Empress's power many times. He knew that her threat was not empty. She could do exactly what she said. But he had also served the Council, and the Council's decision had been unanimous. Humanity was a threat. The analysts had confirmed it. The data was clear. "Empress," he said, choosing his words with extreme care, "I do not question your authority, but I must ask. Why? Why would you protect these creatures? They are primitive, violent, unstable. Everything we have learned about them suggests they will bring chaos to the galaxy if they are allowed to." "Everything you have learned is wrong," Sira said. She turned back to the viewport and looked at Earth. Her voice softened, but it lost none of its power. "I have walked among them, Arbiter. I have lived with them. I have watched them in their homes and their workplaces and their places of worship. And I have seen something that all your analysts, with all their data and their projections, completely failed to understand. What is that, Your Grace? Sira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was almost gentle. They are kind. Blinked. Of all the things he had expected her to say, that was not one of them. Kind, he repeated. Kind, Sira confirmed. Not all of them, not always. They are flawed, yes. They make mistakes. They hurt each other in ways that make no sense, but underneath it all there is something beautiful in them, something we have lost. She turned to face the bridge. Every officer, every crew member was watching her with wide eyes. I met a man on that planet, she continued. A simple man, a mechanic who fixes broken machines in a small town. He has no wealth, no power, no influence. By our standards, he is nothing, less than nothing. And yet when I walked into his world, hungry and alone, he gave me half of everything he had. Her voice trembled slightly. He did not know who I was. He did not know that I could grant him anything he desired. He did not know that my word could save or destroy his entire species. He just saw a stranger who needed help, and he helped, without hesitation, without calculation, without expecting anything in return. She looked at. When was the last time anyone in the Concord did something like that, Arbiter? When was the last time any of us gave without counting the cost? When was the last time we showed kindness simply because it was the right thing to do? Had no answer. We have built an empire that spans the galaxy, Sira said. We have conquered death itself. We have achieved things that these humans cannot even imagine. But somewhere along the way, we forgot what it means to be alive. We forgot that power without compassion is meaningless. We forgot that the strongest civilizations are not built on fear and control, but on trust and generosity. She raised her hand, and the entire fleet felt her will pressing against them like a physical force. This world is under my protection, she declared. From this moment forward, Earth and all its inhabitants are to be considered sovereign. They will not be contained. They will not be quarantined. They will not be eliminated. They will be given time to grow, to learn, to find their own place among the stars. And if the council disagrees? Asked quietly. Sira's eyes flared with light so bright that everyone on the bridge had to look away. Then the council will answer to me. There was a long silence, then slowly bowed his head. As you command, Your Grace. He turned to the crew. Stand down the barrier sequence. All ships hold position. No hostile action is to be taken against the planet or its inhabitants. The officers moved to obey. The alarm stopped. The weapons powered down. The fleet, which had been prepared to seal humanity's fate forever, went still. Sira looked at Earth one last time. Somewhere down there, in a small town called, a man named Danny Carver was probably sitting in his diner, wondering what had happened to the strange woman who had disappeared in a flash of golden light. She hoped she would see him again someday. 10 years passed on Earth. Danny Carver turned 42 in the spring. His hair had started going gray at the temples, and there were more lines around his eyes than before. But he still ran his garage in. He still ate his turkey club sandwich at his diner every evening. He still helped his neighbors whenever they needed him. Life went on, the way it always did. But something had changed in Danny, something deep inside him that he could not explain. He thought about Sira often, every day in fact. He would be working on an engine or walking down the street, and suddenly her face would appear in his mind. Those violet eyes, that silver hair, the way she had looked at him like he was the most fascinating thing in the universe. He had tried to find her. In the weeks after she disappeared, he had searched everywhere. He called hospitals and police stations. He drove through every town within 100 miles. He even posted flyers with a description of her, feeling foolish the entire time. No one had seen her. No one knew who she was. It was like she had never existed at all. Eventually, Danny stopped searching. But he never stopped wondering. Where had she come from? Where had she gone? What was that golden light that had taken her away? And why did he feel deep in his heart that something important had happened that night? He could not know that his kindness had saved his world. He could not know that a fleet of warships had been ready to seal humanity away forever. He could not know that the most powerful being in the galaxy had changed her mind because of a sandwich. All he knew was that he had met someone special, and he missed her. Then one morning in October, everything changed. Danny was in his garage replacing the brake pads on an old pickup truck when he heard the sound. It was low and deep, like thunder rolling across the sky, but there were no clouds. The sun was shining bright and the air was clear and still. He walked outside and looked up. Something was descending from the sky. It was a ship, not a plane or a helicopter, but something else entirely. It was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop, with no visible windows or engines. It moved through the air in complete silence, leaving a trail of soft blue light behind it. Danny stood frozen, his mouth hanging open, as the ship landed in the field behind his garage. The grass flattened beneath it. The air shimmered with heat. Then a door appeared in the side of the hull, sliding open without a sound. Figures emerged. They were tall and strange, wearing flowing robes of white and gold. Their skin was different colors, blue, green, silver. Their eyes were large and bright. They moved with a grace that no human could match. Danny's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. His legs felt weak. His mind was screaming at him to run, to hide, to do something, but he could not move. Then he saw her. She stepped out of the ship last, wearing a gown of pure light that flowed around her like water. Her silver hair was longer now, reaching past her waist. Her violet eyes were exactly as he remembered them. "Sira." She walked toward him slowly, and despite the guards and the ship and the impossible reality of it all, Danny found himself smiling. "I figured you'd come back eventually," he said. His voice was shaking, but his smile was real. "You never finished that sandwich." Sira stopped in front of him. For a moment she just looked at him. Then she laughed. It was a bright, beautiful sound that seemed to fill the whole world with warmth. "I have missed you, Danny Carver," she said. "I missed you too," Danny replied, "though I have to admit I wasn't expecting this." He gestured at the ship, the aliens, the impossible scene surrounding them. Sira smiled. "There is much I need to explain, but first there is something I must do." She reached into her robes and pulled out a small object. It was a badge made of crystal, clear as glass but glowing with inner light. She held it out to him. "Danny Carver of Earth," she said, and her voice took on a formal tone. "By decree of the Galactic Conquered, humanity has been granted protectorate status. You are to serve as Earth's first ambassador to the stars." Danny stared at the badge. Then he looked at Sira. Then he looked at the alien standing behind her. Then he looked back at the badge. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Did you say ambassador?" "Yes." "To the stars?" "Yes." Danny was quiet for a long moment. His brain was trying very hard to process everything that was happening. It was not doing a very good job. "Does this come with dental?" he asked finally. Sira's smile grew wider. "It comes with everything." Danny took the badge. It was warm in his hand, and it seemed to pulse with a gentle light that matched his heartbeat. "Why me?" he asked. "I'm nobody. I'm just a mechanic from a small town. There are millions of people more qualified than me. Scientists, politicians, people who actually know what they're doing." Sira stepped closer. She took his hand, just as she had done in the diner 10 years ago. "Because you showed me what humanity truly is," she said softly. "Not the violence and chaos that my advisors warned me about. Not the fear and suspicion that would have doomed your world. You showed me the kindness, the generosity, the simple goodness that exists in human hearts." She squeezed his hand. "You offered a stranger half of your sandwich, Danny. You gave without expecting anything in return. That single act changed everything. It changed me. It changed the fate of your entire species." Danny looked into her violet eyes. He saw the weight of ages there, the wisdom of, but he also saw something else, something warm and human. "So what happens now?" he asked. Sierra smiled. "Now," she said, "you come with me. There is a whole galaxy waiting to meet you. Billions of species who have never known a human, wonders beyond anything you have ever imagined." She turned and began walking toward the ship. Danny hesitated for just a moment, looking back at his garage, at the town he had known his whole life, at the world he was about to leave behind. Then he laughed, shook his head, and followed her. After all, how could he say no? A pretty alien had just offered him the stars. And he still owed her the other half of that sandwich.